Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome inside the latest edition of Across the Cavs. In Washington, an unfortunate pool party, but the Cavs were still splashing more than the Wizards as the game did come down to its wire. Jordan Poole fouls out. He and Kuzma were not enough. The Cavs survived the Wizards, a statement we shouldn't have had to say, but had to say it nonetheless because that's what happened. We got the folks from the ChaseDown, Carter and Justin joining. We're breaking down that game and everything else going on with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Coming up next on Network 216. Here we go. Pleasure to welcome both of you back in on a night where the Cavaliers almost lost to the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair statement. The Cavs did turn it on. I was pretty pleased with their overall effort in the second half, but Washington opening up the fourth quarter on that run certainly got me feeling a little bit tight. One of those games where it's clear that the Cavs are still looking to find their groove right now since the All-Star break, or really since the Toronto game. But overall, I think there's definitely some positives to take from this game, including Caris LeVert finally getting out of his slump.
Yeah, it's weird. To Zach's point, it doesn't feel like a game where the Cavs lost the first quarter by 4 points and then won the subsequent 3 quarters, which is what they did. It was just kind of one of those games where I think, I think we've been a little spoiled by the fact that, they were just absolutely running teams off the floor for a solid month and a half, and right now it's a bit more of a labor. And yeah, there was some tightness in the Rodriguez household early on in the fourth quarter while I was doing bath time for the kids. It's like just getting grumpy, looking at my phone off to the side, and being an unpresent father, like we all want our fathers to be.
I was going to say, normally it's the kids splashing in the tub, but it was you just, come on, close out, box out.
But yeah, I mean, the reality is, it was another weird kind of mucky game that didn't feel quite right. But this time, unlike, in the last couple of losses, the Cavs, put together 5, 6, 7 straight good possessions in a row and closed it out. And what else can you ask for in the end? As Justin's fond of saying, they don't ask how, they ask how many.
Damn right.
This is the 5th straight Cavs game to be decided by single digits, so it's really just been a buckle up. Let's see how this goes down the stretch. But what I want to talk about first is that a lot of the discourse since he came back from his injury has been about Darius Garland. And look, he's had his ups, he's had his downs. He led all players tonight. He was plus 22, which was a pleasant surprise, 7 assists to 3 turnovers. Justin, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on Darius since he came back? And what does he maybe still need to do to fully integrate into the offense?
Yeah, I think he's still a ways away. I think there's encouraging signs with these last couple games, but I still think he's quite a ways away from what we're accustomed to seeing with him. I think he kind of found his footing before the jaw injury. He had a solid month there. I'm happy to see since he's come back that the turnovers have been down for the most part. Back to having a stellar assist to turnover ratio. But you can kind of tell that he's not welcoming contact. I think to start the year, he was probably looking to draw contact a little too frequently, and now it has gone to the polar opposite of that spectrum. I liked seeing, him being confident in the second half and starting to pull. Definitely keeping an eye on the fact that the team's 3-point attempts all across the board are down. But that certainly wasn't his fault tonight, taking 9 threes. But I would still say that there have been times where even in this game, he passed up 3-point attempts and ended up taking a more difficult one. Like a lot of them are step backs, and they aren't really those in rhythm, in transition pull-up jumpers that we're accustomed to seeing. He started taking more in the fourth quarter, but I still think we're quite a ways away from him being the version of Darius we need to see in order for the Cavs to achieve their goals this season.
Yeah, it was encouraging though to see in that fourth quarter 4 straight 3-point attempts, including a pretty crazy step back 3 in transition. Like those are the kind of shots that you want to see him taking and stepping into. I mean, it's not that I don't like when he takes off the dribble threes where he's doing like, dribbling into a step back, but like those really aren't the threes I'm focusing on when I'm worried about his volume. It's really the trailer, the catch and shoot, those kind of looks, the ones coming off ball action, like self-created off the dribble threes still should be like a last resort for the offense, and so like I really liked the kind of attempts he was taking, when he hit those 2 threes in a row. Just it felt important for him. He had a few really, really nice playmaking plays. But I just overall to like in the macro outside of this game, Zach, I just think you got a guy who's trying to find his way a little bit. It's just been a year where something's always been a little amiss. And I got to imagine it's got to be so hard to get, your feet under you when you're dealing with all these just various maladies, as the hand injury, the hammy injury, the jaw injury. Big priority for him was adding all this functional strength in the offseason, and then he gets immobilized for 6.5 weeks. And all that muscle atrophies because he can't run. I was funny. This is not reported. This is not sourced at all, but I was thinking like, I'll bet this all-star break he's just having to like carbo load and try to do cardio, and I'll bet it's miserable, like trying to get his body right back into the right spot. That's what I was thinking about. Obviously there's no way of knowing whether that's true,
Yeah.
but just knowing like what his rehab has to be, it's probably that it's trying to get enough cardio to be in shape but still be able to add strength back that you lost while just being relatively sedentary for a month and a half at a time where you're normally at least able to do some kind of exercise, with an injury above the waist. So I just think he's not quite. I think he has not been outright bad in many games this entire year. I just think he's not been the Darius we know and love. So it's been. I can't help but answer a little in the gray area. I do think the assist to turnover stuff is very quietly encouraging, because I do think there were games in the first leg of the year where the turnovers were actively harming the ability for the team to succeed. If he's still just a little quieter than we might like, that's okay if he's putting up 8 and 2, 8 assists to 2 turnovers. Like that means he's at least part of the machine that's keeping things going and generating good offense for the team, even if he's only getting up 12, 13 shots.
And I think the important thing, though, is the fact that you can take away a win tonight after back-to-back losses. So the question, I think,
better than a third loss.
Nothing. They avoided going tic-tac-toe. After tic-tac, they said, all right, let's take a breath, man. We don't need to go tic-tac-toe in the line of win-loss. But the question I think we need to discuss, or really the point I think we need to make, is that does any of those 2 losses, are they fully on Donovan not being there? Is that taking a week off? Is there a lack of cohesion when for the first time in a while Darius becomes option A with facilitating? Or what would you say the main points are with these 3 games where they've never dominated for a whole quarter really in any of these last 3 since coming back?
I think focus is kind of what I would put on it more than anything else. Like you look at how the Cavs have performed this season. Typically, they've played better when they've played better competition. The one anomaly of that run that they had was, smoking teams that they should be beating. They weren't doing a whole lot of that. They continued to do that with Garland and Mobley back, but then you saw it after the Toronto game. Toronto has been one of those spots where they go in there and they never play well. They blew the doors off Toronto, and then they drop, the game against the Sixers. They scrape out a win against the Bulls. And Donovan said after that Sixers loss, like, hey, we can't become, complacent with success. We can't already turn our focus to the playoffs. And I think, having some malaise after a winning streak is normal. Having some malaise around the All-Star break is very normal. But ultimately, it's a focus thing, right? Like in a lot of ways, an NBA season is similar to an NBA game itself, where you're going to have those runs both teams make. You're going to have stretches where you look great, stretches where you look awful. And it's about mitigating that and letting, when you lose 2 games, you don't let it become a 5-game losing streak. Like, that's really the key to having regular season success.
Yeah, and I think they're doing that. But I do think well, I'll ask you guys this. Are you a little worried about the 3-point volume just kind of collapsing in these last 3 games? You put up like 22 against Orlando. I don't think they topped 30 tonight. And if they did, it was because of that late flurry of threes from Darius. Yeah, they ended up getting to 32, which is okay. But that there was a lot of volume there at the end that popped that up. And then against Philly, they took 27. Like, what happened? Like, I'm a little disappointed that's fallen so far off. I know Orlando does a good job of baiting us into less volume, but I feel like there's something that's a little bit missing there.
I think there's a few pieces, Justin. I'll start here. I think there's a few pieces. Max Strus is still as valuable as any player when it comes to everything he does on the floor. But I've noticed in most of these last 10 to 12 games, he's shooting less to begin with. So you see him really only help slash. First possession of the game, he drove in, looked for a basket, got fouled, split the free throws. After that, he took 3 shots in 26 minutes. You look at George Niang, who would provide a volume. He took 4 threes in 17 minutes. Caris usually takes more, but he was driving. He took 3. Donovan only took 6, only 10 shots to begin with. He's trying to reacclimate. With Mobley not taking them, Sam Merrill only getting 6 minutes. I think you'd normally see, a few more from Niang. You'd see Strus taking 8 or 9 instead of 3. And I think, I don't know what it is, but maybe they were worried that every time the Wizards made one, they felt like they didn't want to get into a 3-point match, so they tried to use their size instead. And maybe that kind of backfired and led to fewer attempts.
Yeah, I think that could certainly be part of it. I mean, I've definitely noticed a effort to play through the bigs in these games in particular. Both the Philly game where you have B-ball Paul, undersized big, trying to play through the bigs, and then attacking Bagley tonight. I don't know if worried is the right word, but it's definitely something I have my eye on because Mobley and Garland come back, and there was no issue in terms of keeping up that 3-point volume, right? Like, you get 40 against the Clippers. They hadn't been below 35 at any point prior to the All-Star break, usually getting up, between 37 and 44 threes. So we know that they're capable of doing that with this roster configuration. We know that that's what the coaching staff wants from them, is to get that 3-point volume up. So the fact that they're getting away from it, I think that's an example of, hey, things are a little tight. We're reverting to bad habits. It's just, is this going to be something that they can course correct and get back to that, right? Like, are they able to get the ball moving with the momentum that I had earlier? It's definitely concerning in the short term. But I think now that we have the proof of concept, both, with Garland and Mobley being out and with them being back where they were able to get up that 3-point volume, I don't think there's a lot of excuses. I think it's clear what the coaching staff wants, and ultimately it's on the players to play with the type of pace, with the tempo, to move the ball with enough energy and take confident shots in order to get that 3-point volume back up there.
I just did some very rough stat pulls of Max Strus, not counting tonight because obviously that game wasn't going to make it into the log just yet. However, first 34 games of the year, he was taking about 8.3 threes per game. It's down to 5 in his last 21. That's a pretty not insignificant volume drop off. So that drop off combined with more Mobley minutes, more Jarrett minutes,
Merrill not playing as much,
2 bigs, no Merrill. All of a sudden, you start kind of being able to piece together. Dean has not been taking as many as of late, not just playing as much. And you do start to piece together a little bit. Where these 30-ish 3-point attempt games are coming from.
And plus, Niang so frequently is driving, right? Rather than being a quick trigger kind of polling from 3 type of player. So I think there's a variety of factors. But like I said, we know how they want to play. It's just a matter of how quickly can they turn things around and can they get back to that, or are they going to start, reverting to some of their other habits? Because ultimately, it's on the players, it's on the guys running the team, Garland and Mitchell setting a tone, and the type of accountability that they talked about during that stretch, where Dean's like, "Hey, if I pass up a shot, everyone's getting on me." That needs to be the mentality, and they have to be holding one another accountable to make sure that, hey, we aren't getting outshot by significant margins and losing those math battles.
And with that said, Carter, I'll start with you. His name just came up. He's been certainly a topic of discussion, mostly on the positive side, which has been an incredible surprise. But he'll play in the first half. He comes in halfway through the second quarter. Then sometimes we don't hear from him again. What should the Sam Merrill role be on a fully healthy Cavaliers basketball team?
Man, I think it's so matchup dependent right now. It feels very much like he is the odd man out. He is the 10th guy, and it's just hard for JB to find more than 10 minutes for him in the current slot. And if the guys above him are playing well, I think that's fair, because you should conceivably be getting a lot of the things Merrill does from guys like Strus, guys like Niang. In practice, I'm not sure. I think Niang's had some really rough run as of late. Wade has kind of become a little invisible again. But so maybe you give him minutes, but like this is the challenge with the 10-man rotation is just no one like we can. It's very easy to tell your coach run 10 because we have 10 guys we like and we want to see. But then there are some practical realities where you go, oh man, I just can't find minutes for anyone because the game's close, so I need to play my starters for the last 8 minutes of the fourth quarter. Like, when that ends up being the case, which it kind of was tonight, then you have Dean Wade getting 8 minutes, Niang only getting it's Niang took 4 threes in his 17 minutes. So it's a perfectly respectable rate, but like it's just hard to get him out there. Okoro only plays 19 minutes. And so like I just think it's tough. You could make the case in some matchups. He could be, Merrill could be that 8th guy over a guy like Niang or over a guy like Wade, just for balancing out lineups. But that's tough. Those guys have a lot. Those 2 guys in front of him just have a little bit more pedigree, a little bit more, they're a little bit, especially Wade is like a little more matchup proof. So I'm not quite sure what the answer is, to be honest. That was a long road to saying nothing.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, it's a good answer. I'm glad that none of us have any say in what happens on the court, and we just get to talk about it after it's over.
It's tough, man. Justin, I don't know if you feel differently from me, but like right now, it just kind of feels like he's going to be the odd man out while they're playing 10.
Yeah, I think it sucks, but it's a roster crunch, and where they have the most depth is with the guards. So, as Darius and Donovan play full minutes, as Okoro continues to play so good, and Caris provides, what he provides. The spot that they have, like an unknown when it comes to the roster in terms of rotation, is backup 4. That's the only question mark that they have when you look at the 5 positions. Dean and George can both play really well there, but they're competing with for minutes with one another. Backup 5, that's answered. That's Evan Mobley, right? So the availabilities are in the front court, so that just makes things a little more tough for Merrill.
Yeah, so it ultimately, obviously, as you guys both mentioned, depends. But I think, right, if you have a Merrill type to come in and play the minutes that we were hoping Danny Green might take effectively in the first round last year, you get into a playoff situation. Usually, all you're missing is one more guy to space the defense out, call a couple plays for, and get some quick buckets. He could be that answer that you were missing because he wasn't acclimated enough to Cleveland yet last season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think no matter what, he's a great break glass in case of emergency option, and you wonder if the coaching staff is like, man, we should have tried him last year, knowing what we know now.
Yeah. We
because
complained about no levers to pull for so long, but then now one has emerged where I guess we could have gone that direction.
yeah, no, and to be clear, I'm not Captain Hindsighting that. I wouldn't have thought to put him out there.
No.
So like, but so it's great breaking glass in case of emergency. But again, if you want him out there, you do just have to accept that you're probably just going to be a much smaller team. And that is a bit of a scary proposition, being positionally small along the perimeter and, a lot of Caris at the 3 minutes and things like that. Those can leave you vulnerable. So I don't think there's a perfectly clear answer there at the very end of the rotation.
And then from the rotation, we look at the schedule, which crazy about we've talked a lot about, and John Michael said it on every broadcast. You'll find this on any Cavs discussion board. They do not have more than one day off between games until their games on March 13th and 16th. So we look at their upcoming stretch. Between now and next Sunday, they still have 4 more games. They host Dallas. Then on the second end of a back-to-back, they go to Chicago. Then they go to Detroit. Then they host the Knicks. Following that, they host Boston. Second end, they face a Trae Youngless Hawks team. He'll be out 4 weeks with a pinky injury minimum, and if they're not in the playing discussion, he'll be out. Then they have a weekend with Minnesota, Brooklyn, then Phoenix, New Orleans, Houston. But looking ahead just for this next 5 games, they host Dallas, as mentioned. They host Chicago, at Detroit, home against the Knicks.
Chicago. They're at Chicago. They're host versus Dallas at Chicago.
All right, correct. Thank you. So host Dallas, at Chicago, at Detroit, home against the Knicks and Celtics. These 5 games will happen in the next 9 days, starting with Tuesday, so 5 and 8 days. What are your thoughts on how important this stretch is and what you want to see against New York and Boston in those games?
Well, let me first say the week of March 3rd, and I know I'm going to extend a little past your 5-day window. Talk about an important one for the Cavs narratives, because they got ESPN hosting the Knicks, who should be getting a lot healthier, who are getting a lot healthier. I don't know if they'll have OG or Randall back by then, but they're looming. Then you have against the Celtics on TNT on Tuesday, and then Friday you host the T-Wolves on ESPN. Like we beg for that level of national coverage. 3 national games in a week, so that'll be a big one for, like, if the Cavs want it. If you're one of these people that is grumpy about the Cavs public perception nationally, that'll be a big week for your boys.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the upcoming stretch, one, it is just brutal. I mean, it is really, really rough. Even though all the games aren't crazy, just the level of schedule. Like, one thing that was so crazy about January, February is even when the Cavs had schedule losses, they just didn't lose. But that's pretty uncommon. Like every team takes schedule losses, and the Cavs have a lot of those kind of on the docket, so to speak. Not saying that they will, but ones that, the sharps in Vegas would look at as like really good spots. And I think it's why it's really important to win games like the one you did tonight, where things weren't going well, but you just pulled it together enough to put a team away. Because, if they had lost tonight, we'd be looking at this upcoming stretch going, man, 2 seed just doesn't feel very good, does it? You need to win. You need to take home the wins when you can. And even if things aren't optimal, to kind of prep for those kind of stretches like this, because like versus Dallas, at Chicago, at Detroit, versus New York, like, okay, there's like a lot of people would say that's a 2-2 stretch, but like if Dallas beats you and they're red hot, then you have to, and you expend a lot of minutes, a lot of energy, then you have to fly to Chicago that night. That's scary. That's harder than what just looking at the schedule. Just looking at the list of names might indicate. So I would say it's gonna be an uphill battle. I would really like to see them show that level of focus, resilience, and polish and togetherness, and maybe more than anything, clarity of purpose. To kind of to just show, like, hey, we know who we are. We don't need to figure much out. We actually know. We just got to go do it.
Yeah, it's a really important stretch. It's It's also a reminder of just how damn long the season is. Like Darius and Evan missed 14 games, and we have 26 games left. We have basically twice as many games as they missed, and that felt like such a long time, right? Like as
Yeah.
much as we talk about, you want to finish strong after the break. Last year they started 1-3 after the All-Star break, but it was the post All-Star stretch that really got them up into home court, right? Like they were just like 5 games above 500 going into the break or whatever it was and finished 20 above, right? So how you do right now isn't necessarily an indication of how you're going to finish over the next 2 months here. But as Carter said, these are very important games. They're important for the narrative. You don't have a lot of kind of litmus test matchups against teams in the Eastern Conference, so you have to make the most of these opportunities that you do get. And you just hope that, the trend of the Cavs playing better when they play better competition continues. I don't feel great about how they're looking right now, obviously. But things can turn so easily. Like they turn within a game, right? Like you hit a couple momentum shots and you start playing a little bit freer. Who knows? Maybe they exercise some demons here against Washington and can continue some momentum against Dallas. Basketball is a funny thing. So it'll be interesting to see how they do.
I think we played Dallas really well, by the way. I have always liked the way we match up with them over the last couple of years. Dallas has gotten
They're a
us a
new
couple
team.
times.
They're a new team.
Well, they
Kyrie's
said
playing
set
well.
that's
three
fair.
right
They're
after he got blocked by
constantly
Max Strus, right? That's why he's gone. Max Strus got him out of Dallas.
Very true.
So yeah, and one thing we didn't mention that Justin is always very on top of, that I'm actually surprised you didn't mention, buddy. In terms of the importance of the upcoming stretch, every win against the Central Division is really important right now. And that game in Chicago might not look like an important game on the schedule, but I don't remember exactly what the record the Cavs have to go the rest of the way in the Central to earn the tiebreaker with Milwaukee. But
They need
every
2 more.
win is nice.
They need 2 more wins. So when you play Chicago and then Detroit, Wednesday, Friday, you can lock up the tiebreaker against Milwaukee this week. And those are games that they should win. I know it's a back-to-back, but it's a back-to-back for Chicago as well, even though they're at home. That's an opportunity. Like if you can put that in your back pocket, Cavs are already 2 losses up on Milwaukee in the loss column. You basically functionally make that 3, right? So
Yep.
that would be really, really big to lock up this week.
And don't sleep on that Pistons game. The Cavs should be able to get it done, but they took Orlando to the final possession last night. And then we've seen so many of their games since they added all these different veterans. Their entire bench, like Charlotte, was fully reformed after the deadline, as well as their starting lineup. So both of these teams, just Detroit, but then all these bad teams now with these new players have this new confidence post-break. It's like, all right, we're going to surprise the Hornets winning 4 straight, regardless of competition. People probably said, oh, they're going to go 0-4. But no, they went 4-0. So at this time of the year, right, every game counts. Take care of your business. We got 2 more quick things here, guys. The first is, how important will it be? And Carter, you just touched on this, but should there be an overreaction if the Cavs fail to perform against Boston, New York, Minnesota in any of the games? If any of them are just complete duds?
I think, I think the structure of the question makes me say there shouldn't, because overreaction tends to mean you reacted too big.
Yes.
But like, should it matter? Yeah. I mean, ultimately, you're just looking for measuring stick games for the rest of the year. The Cavs have done unbelievably well in those games. Think about beating Philly without Donovan Mitchell. Think about the Denver shellacking earlier in the year, but they haven't. They had, of course, the Clippers win. They've had quite a few of these really, really big ones. I don't think that playing well in any of them will like completely change. Like if they win all 3, maybe Cavs start getting like a little more like real contender buzz. But like, I think it's mostly just about looking for things to see and learn in those matchups. Does New York drag you into the mud, or do you get out and run and play your offense? Those are the kind of things I'm looking for. I'm more interested in that than the result.
Yeah. I kind of laughed at the question because should there be? Doesn't matter. There will be. Like,
Yeah.
we those are the measuring stick games. I'm sure like the team would take it hard too, right? Like they're going to get up for those games. Like they are on that path of trying to prove themselves. So yeah, I think those matchups are significant and there's going to be noteworthy takeaways from that because especially when you talk about Knicks and Celtics, we haven't seen what the Cavs look like fully healthy against those teams at any point this season, right? Like Darius and J.A. missed the first 2 against the Knicks. Mobley missed the games against Boston. Darius broke his jaw, right? Like we haven't seen what it looks like healthy. So those are one of the only opportunities. Now, it's not going to be
Mobley has not
definitive.
played against the Celtics yet, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Crazy.
It's going to be a time, right? Hopefully, what ends up happening for the Cavs' sake, right? The outside noise doesn't serve as a deterrent. The players do what they need to do, and we see a competitive basketball team. Because if they can show them finally playing the big dogs on national TV, especially all in the same week, in the same span of 6 days, that they can compete, then I think it's going to answer a lot of questions from those that watch one Cavs game a year and base all opinions on that one game. And I think that's massive. But tomorrow, Craig Porter Jr., turning 24 years of age. Can both of you say something nice about CPJ?
I mean, he's the latest of the undrafted steals for the Cavs. Like, I think that he's absolutely someone that, he's still got a little ways to go, but he's done enough in a very short period of time to earn a NBA contract, and he's going to be someone that is going to be, I think, a fixture of the Cavs rotation in years to come. I can't see that occurring this year, just because of the depth that they have, but he's a very valuable piece to have.
Yeah, he is. He's been such a joy to watch. Most rookies don't get kind of like a highlight moment or like a marquee moment early in their career, like him driving into Joel Embiid's chest in overtime and finishing over him. Just completely fearless. One of my favorite, discoveries, and a guy that we thought we might like after some initial research after the contract was signed, and boy, did Craig validate that. So really, really happy to have him on the team, and happy birthday, buddy.
Big 2-4 Samardo Samuel's year will finally begin.
My God.
Had to go there. We could have called it the Scotty Hobson year. I think he wore 24 too. Right? We got a whole list of names here. You know, my list is deep. We talked about Tony Batiste last time we were on, right? We got a deep list.
Wasn't that Richard Jefferson?
He also was 24, yes.
Yes. Come on, let's go RJ. Let's get some love to the NBA champ.
There's a lot of names we could pull, but we'll show RJ. But nonetheless. So just a reminder for those that may live in a cave and jump out once every couple of weeks, where can we find the ChaseDown podcast, and where can we hear Cavs thoughts from both of you as individuals?
Yeah, you can find the ChaseDown wherever you found this podcast, as well as the Cavs YouTube channel. We try to go live twice a week after games. You can find us at Twitter. I'm at Cavsanada, slap Cavs in Canada. You'll find me there. Carter is Carter_Shade. Middle name, not a shady individual.
Oh, well, I'm a little bit of both, brother.
That's fair.
Yeah. Pleasure having you both on, Carter and Justin. Looking forward to the next time we slice it up as well.
Thank you so much for having us, buddy.
Thank you. Until the next time, Justin Rowan, Carter Rodriguez, Zach Weiss with you saying so long across the Cavs on Network 216. Back soon.